And you hear people say, if everyone had a life review, we wouldn't have any more wars. I used to be an atheist, and I questioned what was the whole purpose of being here on Earth. It felt like this was all random. Underneath everything, there is a mathematical order. I found that in a lot of these experiences, what seems impossible happens. I have learned that anything is possible. Reality is magical at times. A lot of experiencers, they're told directly in their experience, everything is happening as it's meant to happen. Mary Neal, they showed her future and that her son would end up dying as a teenager. Even that was part of this higher plan. And the message was beauty comes of all things, even the death of her son. Knowing that there are reasons behind things that are intelligent. We can't always understand what's happening or why, but in the end, we will.
If this video sparks something in you, but you still have questions, I've got you. Join me live on Wake Up Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. You bring your questions and I'll answer them. And we might even have a surprise guest drop by. Together, we're waking up the collective. Thank you for watching. My guest today is Ned Matinnia, who has 3 important lessons that he has learned from his over 300,000 member NDE Facebook group. And we're going to dive in and have a really special collaborative conversation about lessons from NDE. So Ned, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I first of all want to congratulate you. You have reached a 300,000 member milestone.
Thank you. And that's accurate. The whole reason I created this group and the whole prayer I have about it is I wanted to help people and to get the word out about these experiences and that they are real. And for a lot of people who have NDEs, the only people who truly understand them are other experiencers. And if you're an experiencer yourself, you probably have tried to tell a doctor, a nurse, a spouse, a friend, and even then, people often might be polite, but they don't really understand, or worse, they might not be interested or even judge you. And yeah, thank you. I'll add there are many other spiritual and NDE groups on Facebook and the internet. And so I'm in a lot of others as well. I don't see it as a competition. I think the whole message is shared across all of them. And some are private, some are public. Mine is public because I want other people who are just curious, who kind of stumble into it and join in the conversation.
I think it's such a beautiful story, Ned, because I know that you started your journey not as a believer in these types of experiences, but actually as an atheist who thought when you died, you died. And I would love for you to share a little bit because I think that there are a lot of people who could be watching or maybe who are sharing this video who are agnostic and they just don't really know if these experiences that they hear about are real. So there was something, a catalyst that took you from being in this place where you're like, I don't believe this, to wow, these are real. Let me help share this with the world. So will you bridge that gap and share with people that part of your journey?
Yeah, I used to be an atheist, and I questioned what was the whole purpose of being here on Earth anyway. And as a teenager, when I felt like an outcast. And looking back on it, I realized it was a lot of self-imposed. But when you have a traumatic childhood and you don't have a strong support system, and you have a scientific mindset, as I do, I learned about biology and evolution, and I thought that pretty much explains everything. And I thought anything that was religious or spiritual was just man trying to comfort self. And I came across Dr. Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life, and I remember when I read it, I've always had an open mind. I'm not like a skeptic who is adamantly against these. I want to know what the actual truth is. And when I found out that a lot of these near-death experiences are in medical records, and there are so many nurses and surgeons and doctors and EMTs and family members who have real and true stories of the person who accurately explained what happened when they couldn't have known or seen or heard, and oftentimes when a person wakes up from an NDE, they will shock everyone because oftentimes people are not expecting a recovery. And sometimes these experiences happen after the pronouncement of death, even. It was all of this evidence that it perked me up and then it was also the fact that beyond
It's 2:45.
this information, it was people would talk about similar things, including love, compassion, other lifetimes, there's a higher power, and the fact that it isn't a religious thing, it doesn't even depend on someone's belief system. And the fact that people's minds are basically blown, it's like an epiphany. Um, whether an atheist has this experience or a fundamentalist Baptist has this experience, a Hindu, everyone is actually realizing that reality or life and death is actually bigger and greater, and there's more than this mundane physical reality. And after I learned about all these, I learned about the International Association for Near-Death Studies, or um, I can't say the word.
Lions.
IANS, yes. And I attended the first a conference which I went to. It was in Scottsdale, Arizona in 2012. And it was a huge eye opener too, because I started to become friends with these experiencers. And it's just amazing. I feel like near-death experiences saved my life. And I say that about NDEs, but also about mediums. And the more that I hung around mediums and NDEers, you find that there's a lot of overlap, and a lot of experiencers become mediums, even if they have no interest in it, but they just, it's like it opens up their intuition, their aura or something. And all of this, it's like I had a hard time in school. After I became depressed in high school, I basically gave up on homework. I thought, what's the point of all this? What's the point of a college and a job? Like, I didn't see a reason. And I feel like for a lot of people, when they have family and friends and pets, that is a strong reason. At that time, I didn't have that element. I didn't have love or nourishment. And I felt like this explains it's more than just on an intellectual level, knowing that we continue on and that there is life after this, but it's also the fact that it's love, and it's like the connection between everyone that I needed. And so that's a long answer, but that's how I got into this.
No, I'm so glad that you shared all of that because it is such a personal journey, but I feel like it connects so many people. So let's talk about a few of the NDEs that you encountered that are still have wowed you even to this day after you've heard thousands of them.
Several come to mind, although one of the main ones that I want to mention is David Bennett, who is now in heaven. And I put quotes because, it's just a term for the other side. But David, his story has been a part of INs, and he has a lot of interviews on YouTube. And as a friend and as a attendee of these conferences, a speaker at these conferences, I feel reverent about him. And for anyone who hasn't heard, his NDE happened as he was in the ocean. He was off the coast of Ventura, California in a storm, and he basically drowned in waves. And as an engineer and a person who had a very logical mindset, it completely changed his mindset. And I recall even after his NDE, I think it was for weeks afterwards, when he saw the palm trees or plants or animals, he could see the auras around them. And for a person who had never had those kind of experiences before, it really opened his eyes. And so, he passed away just before Christmas last year. And so in honor of him and his story, if anyone is curious, you can look him up on YouTube.
I've got an interview with him, Ned. I'm going to post it right here that people can link to.
I love that. And
it's crazy. I can't believe that you're bringing this up, because I just found out that he passed away this morning. And I said to the person who told me, I'm going to re-release his video on Monday. We're recording this in the beginning of January of 2026. And it's the next video that I'm releasing is his, because I loved, like you, I also thought he's such a nice, nice man. And what an incredible NDE he had.
exactly. And his book, I recommend it for anyone out there. It isn't too long. However, it's incredibly dense in terms of wisdom, and it's called Voyage of Purpose. And in his experience when he was in the ocean and drowning, he went on the other side, which he didn't believe in. He found himself in the presence of his soul family, and I think he talks about the bright light, the higher intelligence source, and like a lot of experiencers, a lot of them, when they're in this environment, are so happy or are so like feel at home there, that he was eventually told, he has a purpose on earth still, he has to return. And he argued, and I've heard other experiencers argue too. And eventually, this light and intelligence repeated, "You have a purpose." And I think it was like 3 times, but it kept on telling him firmly about his purpose. And then he was actually forced back into his body. And if you picture this, he was in the ocean, and 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 by coincidence, his arm ended up wrapped around I think it's called a bow line or anchor line in the ocean, and it caught on there, and then I guess the waves pushed him up closer to the surface, and his crewmates eventually found him. And so, um, I found that in a lot of these experiences, what seems impossible happens. And so I have learned through these experiences that anything is possible. Reality is magical at times. Like oftentimes it seems mundane, but there are times when extraordinary events happen. And in his case, he came back, and it humbled him a lot. And so his book, Voyage of Purpose. I highly recommend it. It has a lot of wisdom, and it talks about his life experience or story. And another experiencer who always I feel her story is so powerful is um,
Amy Call.
Amy Call. And even though she hasn't been uh, actively interviewing or in the public's eye for many years now, her story is out there on YouTube, and Laurie actually has a version of her interview on her channel. And I recommend, if you are either feeling lost or you need some inspiration in life, her story is fascinating because uh, she grew up in a strict Mormon family and taught everything in black and white in terms of all the rules and all that. And as a kid, she always was extremely empathic. And so if she saw someone suffering or the suffering of animals or what's on the news, it always impacted her. And she had a hard time with her family's beliefs. And in her experience, it was because of her health issue. Her doctor had prescribed her an experimental medicine, and I think she was allergic. And so she basically asphyxiated. And um, in her experience, she left her body and traveled to this realm, which was kind of, I guess, outside of Earth or above Earth. And she talks about meeting her guide who kind of had a conversation with her and explained many things, but also uh, she talks about how even though she never was into math or science, in this experience, she basically understood how behind everything and underneath reality there are equations and an order to the apparent chaos. And so, like she says, even like a little bug flying around, like even that is part of the order. And so everything that, it seems like it's in chaos, it seems random, and yet above that is an order. And so she talks about equations and how all that is a part of reality. But she also, I remember she talks about how she asked what was the true religion. And her guide, I think she said that he didn't answer her. He kind of smiled and he kind of showed her how silly that question is. Like, it isn't about religion, it isn't about who has the right rules. It's like reality is bigger than that. Um, and for her, as a recovering strict Mormon, it was extremely healing. And so I'm not doing the best at explaining everything in her story, but I recommend if you find her on YouTube, her name is um, Amy Call,
Yeah,
and
I can post it up here so people can click on it and they can watch the version that I have on my channel.
and um, and yeah, her story always has an impact on me if I'm ever feeling lost or as if I'm uh, down or hopeless. And I used to have a lot of anxiety, and I used to have depression. And so a lot of these experiencers and their true and accurate stories are are basically what took me out of being needing a reason to live.
Which is so special that that is what helped, as you said before, save your life. So let's talk about one more. Give me maybe more of a recent one that wowed you.
Let me think here.
It's 3 o'clock.
My friend Andrews, and so Andrew is actually one of our group moderators, and he is a multiple near-death experiencer. And I want to ask, have you talked to him yet? Because if not, he should be on your show.
I have not. I think we talked about him briefly the last time that we were together, and I would really love it if you could connect us. I'd love to have him on the show.
Because his experience is really interesting. And so in this lifetime, he's had a lot of trauma. You know, he's had people uh, who were abusive. He's had injuries and illnesses, and so he's had a few NDEs. I can't remember the cause of his main one, but I know that when he talks and writes about it, that in his experience, he goes to that realm, and I think he has either a conversation with his guides or he has downloads. But it explains the reason that his life is how it is on purpose at the moment, and about his past life, and I think even two other lifetimes. But he talks about how in his a previous or recent lifetime, he was a wealthy banker in New York City, and sort of like a Scrooge, if you can imagine, because he ended up uh, being so focused on money and profit and accumulating, he started to take advantage of his clients in terms of cheating them, etc. And he ended up causing a whole lot of pain for the families in his charge. And I don't remember everything that happened, but I know that after that lifetime, he made an agreement to kind of balance out the energy of that. And so he harmed a lot of people in that life. In this life, he chose willingly to have a lifetime to humble him, almost to kind of have that a sense of restoring balance. And I hope I'm explaining this accurately, Andrew, if you're listening. but but in terms of like actually feeling what it's like to be on the other end of that, and to know um, not to do it again, and also to help people. And so he, um, he's a moderator in the group, and he helps in that way. But I know he's helped a lot of people in other ways. It's almost like his lifetime here now is in the process of giving back. And something I'll add on that is a lot of people have probably heard of the famous medium James Van Praagh. And a while ago, I listened to a talk he gave, and he said that he had a remembrance or a download of his past lifetime, and it was during the American Civil War. and he was like a colonel or a general. He was in charge of a lot of troops, and he said that in that lifetime, he was incredibly ruthless, and he ended up getting many people killed and injured, and it was just like cruel at times. And so he also he chose in this lifetime to kind of do the opposite of that, of like, okay, in that life I was hard, I caused a lot of pain for people. I want to become a healer. I want to help to do the opposite. And so his work and purpose as a medium, I see that as like um, a huge healing opposite of that. And so I find these stories fascinating because it kind of it weaves into the picture a larger story. And when people are suffering or when people are having to experience hardship, we often don't know why. And it's in these epiphanies of the larger storybook. It's incredibly eye-opening. Like there is a reason behind things, and on for me, on a personal level, it gives me faith in that if I do the right thing or just try my best in terms of kindness or love, including to self, it's all worth it. Because I used to, as an atheist, I used to feel like if there isn't a purpose, if we're not here um, beyond our physical lives, what's the point? And I want to add something important because if anyone has heard of Stephen Miller, our current policy advisor, and um, this isn't about becoming political on either side, but just his words, where he basically said, America, because we have um, our military and we are powerful and we can basically take from others because it's the whole belief of might makes right. And in NDEs, the message is isn't about that. It's about it's we're all in this together, and and so like in Andrew's his story or even James Ben Praagh, it I've heard of another NDE. I'm trying to remember his name. If I remember it, I'll say it. However, in his he learned about it's a Latin term. It's called noblesse oblige. Have you heard that? It
No, I
means
haven't.
it means with power comes responsibility. It's like the powerful are obligated to use that um, in a healthy way. And so I forget how it ended up on this whole tangent, but because of here on Earth, it's easy to feel like even though in these experiences they talk about love and kindness, what actually matters is profit, is power. And Stephen was actually saying that the other night. He's like, this isn't about kindness or whatnot. It's about power, and the world runs on all this. And even though humanity has often um, done this, we don't have to. Like there is a higher way, and in these experiences, they show us that kindness matters. And so power isn't a bad thing, but if you have power and kindness, how amazing. And if you use that power in defense of yourself or others who are being picked on, that is the highest use of that. So anyway, that particular topic is extremely dear to my heart.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Let's talk about these important lessons that you have learned from watching these NDEs. You mentioned three of them. One is love, and that includes love to self. The second one is unity. And the third one is a higher order to things that unfold. So, you want to just go in order and talk about them all?
Um, I'll try. Um, and so in terms of love to self, like in my life, I remember when I was in school, I I I often had extremely low self-esteem. I still sometimes it happens, although I'm much better about this now. But in these experiences, they basically remind us and me that our value is not always in our appearance or our strength or height or anything. It's in our soul, and the more that I remember this, I feel like I can express myself more and not judge myself because I'm not as perfect or I don't have the right appearance or the right anything. It's our value, it comes from inside, and that we are loved even especially with our imperfections. It's like oftentimes, and we often can have this even when people are let's say in a relationship and you actually find the quirks or let's say flaws of the other person to be a good thing, like you like them. So yeah, I definitely have healed a lot because of that. And then let's see, the second one you said it was
Unity.
unity. Yes. And so um, one experiencer who comes to mind about that is Rudy Rudensky. And he was born in Texas. He grew up a Baptist, and I think he grew up in the 70s and 80s. And in his world, communists were evil, Russians were evil, and all this like, and he hated anyone who he was taught was wrong. And so he was in a car accident, and in his experience, uh, God it basically it told him uh, firmly and yet lovingly that I love everyone equally. And so it was a huge wake up call to him. And I know that since his experience, he has helped other people who were like him to kind of um, learn and soften their viewpoints. And in so many experience, one after the other, that message of unity is there beyond countries or genders or income levels or anything. And even David Bennett, like he calls it AT&T. He he says it's acceptance, tolerance, and truth. And so, in his world, as a Navy diver, and then as a professional diver, it's kind of a macho culture and whatnot. But he learned in his experience, like if someone is different um, um, than him, or has a different hair color or style or whatever it is, I don't have to love them like romantically. I can just accept them and say, all right, in the past I would have perhaps insulted them, or I would have um, I felt like I didn't like them, and now I can just accept them for who they are, even at a distance. And so I think that is so important for all of us, especially as sometimes in politics or in groups, people will kind of divide each other and say these people are bad or these people are evil, and just remember that in these experiences, every time there's a higher power or a guide, it's always encouraging us about unity, the opposite of that.
Yeah, I think that that's so, so beautiful. And I'd love to add on to that, that my experiences on the other side, the unity was even
3:15.
more about not just accepting somebody, but understanding that they are you and you are them in the most literal sense of what that phrase means. It's not like I'm accepting them because they're like me. They are you, because on the perspective of the other side, we are one consciousness. And so you're a Ned drop, I'm a Laurie drop, you're a drop, the people watching of this consciousness. But the illusion is that you are Ned and I am Laurie and you are you watching, because really we're all source having a Ned experience, a Laurie experience, a you experience. And in that way, when you do something to another, you are doing it to yourself, because everybody feels what everybody does. And this is why the life review for me with NDEs have been so impactful, because it's the reminder that when you go to the other side and you relive every moment of your life, you relive it from your perspective. Oh, yes, I did this and this and this. Some of them are great things. Some of them are maybe not things that you even remembered. And some of them are things that you're maybe even ashamed of. But when you have that experience, you then become the other and you experience the greatness that you imparted on somebody, the mundaneness you imparted on somebody, and the terrible things you imparted on somebody. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Well, I love that, and I actually um, I'm glad that you mentioned that, and also the life review, because that is actually probably one of the most um, important pieces of NDEs that caught my attention. Because you hear people who were, let's say, outright bullies, or just more typically just an average person who sometimes is nice and sometimes mean, and but they realize, like, I don't want to hurt anyone. I want to love, because this is all, we're all one. And so, and you hear that over and over and over again. So, and you hear people say, like, if everyone had a life review, we wouldn't have any more wars. And so
We wouldn't even have anybody trying to steal our identity, for God's sakes. But then you wouldn't have a job and I wouldn't have a job. So
So, um, and I think about that a lot. And actually, I posted about this on Facebook yesterday, just about how often with this life review, a lot of experiencers, they come away with like the golden rule. And that's why when I was in college and searching for answers, I studied Eastern religions, Western religions, and that one golden rule is in common in all religions around the world, and even more indigenous belief systems too. It's always about, like, if you've heard of, I think it's the Mayan or the Incan, where they say "in la catch." It means you greet someone, and it's basically, it means I am you. Like, it's a really simpatico greeting. And so, and um, that is at the core, like, I wonder about, you know, uh, with my professional life as a software engineer, like perhaps even on LinkedIn or more publicly at times, how can I bring this message out into the world? Because even in business, we still, there's a lot of areas where it's a cutthroat competition, and there is no sympathy or empathy or kindness. It's just like, well, we have the money, we're going to overpower these guys, and who cares about these people, and all this kind of energy. And like Anita Moorjani, her NDE, if you've heard of her, um, and she talks about how she learned cooperation will always be better compared to competition. And imagine if more of us around the world were supporting each other and building something amazing. Um, and you think about it like on two levels. There's a level of like, imagine if we are all children on Earth and when children are on a playground and they're kind of building something and they're like, oh, I'll do this thing and I'll do this thing and they're helping each other out, like a sandcastle or anything. So we are like that because we each have our creative spark, our creative interest and angle on things. And some people are incredibly social and experts at that. Other people are incredibly mathematical, and we can all work together. And I got into astrology and numerology. This is a tangent. However, I've heard in some NDEs they talk about learning about the reality of that, and why that made an impact on me is because it shows that we're not all meant to be cookie cutters. Like, we are
Yeah.
different, and our differences are our strengths, and we can. It's not a competition. It's like you're excellent at this. I'm excellent at this. Let's actually put them together and make something cool or make something that helps the world in some way. And I think about when people talk about the future or advanced civilizations, how will we get from here on Earth to a place where it's more advanced, and we kind of have grown tired of and out of all the wars. It's like, enough fighting. Let's actually do something cool. Let's actually form a group of people and countries who we have each other's backs, and if there is anyone who acts up, we contain that. And rather than hurling insults and hatred at them, we heal them. It's a
Mhm.
combination. I think about like if I was a police in the future, or like I think about some advanced civilizations, it could be hypothetical, where the police officer of the future will stop like a robbery or something in progress without any hatred or anger. It's just like, we're gonna stop it with the appropriate force, but we are going to also extend love at the same time to that person. It's sort of like the philosophy of the peaceful warrior about doing no harm and taking no shit. It's just like the combination of those two.
That's a good example. So the last important lesson that you said that you learned that you wanted to share with everybody is the higher order of things.
Yeah, and you know, um, in Amy's experience, she hits this on the head because she talks about how underneath everything there is a mathematical order. And I struggle with this a lot because part of the reason that I questioned about why should I be here on Earth when I was a teenager was it felt like this was all random. It felt like bullies were often in charge in the school or in even at higher levels in governments or around the world. It felt like there wasn't like a a clean or a like an ideal uh, version of how things were operating. And even now, a lot of people feel like everything is all backwards, and it's like, how can we make the progress here, if we're advancing, if everything seems like we're going backwards at times. And so this message is so healing because a lot of experiencers will have like a car crash or a drowning or something, and they're told directly in their experience everything is happening as it's meant to happen, and it's like what? It's so interesting because you know, in my mind that does two things. The first one is it gives a sense of calm and peace, like, wow, okay, if the higher authority here is saying that, I can relax a little bit. I don't understand why things are happening oftentimes. I don't understand other people or natural events, or let's say an earthquake, kills a whole city, and it's just like, how come that had to happen? But knowing that there are reasons behind things that are intelligent in the end and are based on the choices of people, uh, beings, perhaps the earth even will sometimes make her own choices, in terms of volcanoes or whatnot. Like it's that whole message that it seems confusing a lot. It seems chaotic, but there is a higher power, and people sometimes will talk about a higher plan in terms of that, you know, um, um, Mary Neal, if you've heard of her and her experience, she ended up going a kayak over a waterfall in Chile, and she got stuck under it in the rocks, uh, under 10 feet of water, and she ended up breaking many bones in the process, and actually having NDE. And she talks about how um, her guides, and I think even Jesus was a part of her NDE, and they showed her future, and that her son would end up dying as a teenager, and she and this is also, I'll add, not that uncommon. Other experiencers are sometimes shown future events as well, oftentimes personal events, but sometimes even local or regional or global events. But in her case, this happened eventually. It was some years afterwards. Her son who was a teenager. I think he was training to um, either ski or skate or something on the ice or something. But a car hit him, and he passed away. And so her message, even through all this and afterwards, was that even that, the tragedy of that was part of this higher plan that she was shown would happen ahead of time. And the message, it was beauty comes of all things, even the death of her son or her near-death experience, that we can't always understand what's happening or why, but in the end, we will. And and it's almost like a beautiful, sometimes bittersweet symphony of life.
Oh, I think that's such a beautiful way to put it, a bittersweet symphony of life. And you're right, because if we think about it, nobody escapes the planet alive. We're all going to die. There's got to be a way that we die if we're all going to die. So it's just part of the process, even though it's a resistant part that we don't want to look at and examine, or even think that it could be unfolding in a perfection that we don't understand.
And a lot of experiencers have said that, let's say a child or an infant, has cancer, or anything that happens when a person or a pet dies before their time. And even in those cases, there's often learning involved. There's the pain, and the processing of that is its own growth fuel, if you know, as a good analogy, in that if they say the earth is a school, or it's more than that, but one of its aspects is it's like a school, is we are learning, experiencing things, and um, in that in these kind of experiences, which are not always the happiest or the most um, comfortable, that has its own value in shaping us and making us more, I guess the word is experienced.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Well, Ned, I would imagine that people who are watching would love to hear again how
3:30.
they can connect to your NDE Facebook group or anything else that you want to share about how they can connect with you.
So on Facebook, if you type in near-death experiences, and it's the group with the cosmic background, and we just hit the 300,000 members, and so that will also help to identify it because there are a lot of them. And on there, I'm the admin, and there's a moderator team. And if you're interested in helping out, if you also value kindness, and you just want to help the overall health and purpose of the group, message me.
And we were talking about how overwhelming all of the comments that come in can be, and that you are actually looking for a moderator to help, or moderators, plural, to help on your Facebook group, because it's so much, it's way too much for one person to do anymore.
Thank you. And that's accurate. Yes, like um, this group is definitely a group effort. And with my full-time day job, and also the volume of the incoming posts and comments, I can't um, see everything. Actually, maybe like only perhaps a half an hour or 1 hour per day at times. And so if anyone out there is interested in helping to keep the Facebook near-death experiences group uh, friendly and kind, and also um, with the overall intent of helping to get the loving word out, message me on Facebook. And if you type in Ned Matinnia, I'll be there. And on Facebook, the group and our team, which I'm incredibly thankful for, is helping. And so, if you're interested in being a part of that, I'd love to have you, because it's the whole intent. And I'm on Facebook there too. And eventually, I'll have a website. That's it for now.
Okay. Well, Ned, it's always so good to see you and connect with you. Thank you so much for sharing the wisdom of what you've brought into your Facebook group. You gave us a lot of great resources to go and check out, and I'll link those in the show notes. And then occasionally there were links that people could click on. But I want to thank you so much for your tireless work, because I understand how much work it is in what you are doing to help wake up the collective. It is so needed right now.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm honored.
And of course, this show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, to listen, and to share these beautiful experiences with someone who needs to hear it. So thank you, everybody, for watching.
Do you believe that love never dies and you want to hear stories that prove it? Well, hit the subscribe button. You belong here.